introduce our speaker today. Mr. James Lowenthal will be speaking to us about implementing the 5 principles for responsible outdoor lighting. Mr. Lowenthal is the Mary Elizabeth Moses Professor of Astronomy at Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts, in the United States. He received his BS in physics and astronomy from Yale and his PhD in astronomy from the University of Arizona. He studies the formation of and evolution of galaxies, especially actively star-forming galaxies. He leads the local advocacy group Northampton City Lights and the Massachusetts chapter leader for IDA. He chairs the Light Pollution Subcommittee of the American Astronomical Society Committee on Light Pollution, Radio Interference, and Space Debris, and is vice president of the International Astronomical Union's Commission on Site Protection, i.e. light pollution. Of all those, the local case, the small town of Northampton, Massachusetts, is, he says, the most challenging. James, I hope you tell us about that challenge. So I'm going to spotlight you and let you go.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. It's fabulous to see all the hellos from around the world. If you haven't put in the chat where you are, I certainly appreciate it myself. I've been reading every one of them, and welcome aboard. I am going to try to share my screen, but I'm in a little bit of trouble. Michael, maybe you can help me with that. Oh, no, here we go. I think I got it.
Well, from Vietnam. From Vietnam.
There you go.
I have to stop that and start it again for 1 sec.
Saudi Arabia, Norway, Belgium, Ireland.
All right, James, we got you.
All right. Ready to roll. How Northampton, Mass. Endorsed the 5 principles of responsible outdoor lighting. A quick intro to Northampton. And Michael, you can see this, I assume, pictures changing?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. Northampton is in Western Mass, about 2 hours west of the well-known city of Boston, in a beautiful agricultural region that is in the Connecticut River Valley. We treasure our farmland. There's a very rich history of New England running through this region. People care a lot about the natural world. There's a lot of activism. There's a lot of political activism, a lot of environmental activism. There's this historic Victorian hotel up on Mount Holyoke, which if you're in just the right place, you can see the moon or the sun rise behind from Northampton. That hotel used to be a destination in the Victorian days for anybody visiting Northampton. VIPs would go spend their time there. Some views from in town. This is a city of 30,000. It's a small city, but with a lot of heart. A library built by the famous architect in America, H.H. Richardson, over 100 years ago. Notice there are no lights poking around there in that view. What does it look like today? I'm sure you see immediately what I see when you look at the design of these lights. The middle of town, the intersection of the 2 main routes right through downtown Northampton 100 years ago and today, flooded with light at night. There is a moon visible there, barely, but it's pretty much outshined by the bright street lights. This view of City Hall includes the President Calvin Coolidge, who was previously mayor of Northampton. And City Hall today is more like this, with, again, bright street lights shining, poking you in the eye. Downtown has seen many, many parades. This is the widest downtown street, the widest main street in all of Massachusetts. And it's a terrific gathering place when it's devoted to people like this and in the daytime. Now, we know that all these people 100 years ago could have looked up that very night, if it were clear, and seen a beautiful Milky Way. Tonight, if they look up and it's clear, what they see is a lot of competition from ground-based light pollution. This is a view from Smith College, where I work, looking at downtown, and you see it's just awash with lights, and of course the clouds are all illuminated from underneath. If we were in space, we would have this light pollution view from 2012, and you know what's coming. Just 7 short years later, the light pollution is creeping out into the valleys. Here you see Northampton, situated in Western Massachusetts, compared to the much larger city of Springfield to our south, 200,000, and leading up to the top of this picture is heading towards Vermont, where skies are much darker, population density is lower, and the whole state of Vermont is almost completely forest and farmland. Northampton has a pretty good outdoor lighting code. It was adopted over 15 years ago. It was pretty much state of the art in 2006. I was happy to attend a hearing back then and argue in favor of it. This was before any city or town in Massachusetts had put up LED streetlights. It's before pretty much anybody had brought LEDs into their homes or put them on their porches. It was sort of the early days of my experience and exposure to crafting good bylaws, thinking about legislation, thinking about the regulation of lighting in town. But I was happy it happened. Its main problems are it allows lights as bright as I think 5,000 lumens or something like that, fully exempted from any of these regulations. In other words, most streetlights would not actually be subject to these regulations, but at least the intent is good. It's got some pictures of good lights and bad lights. It talks about shielding. It talks about the maximum amount of light. So it's got some decent values in there, but it really needs updating. It's routinely ignored. For example, this development in Northampton happened well after the lighting bylaw was put in place. And these lights were approved by the planning board. They're terrible lights, as we can all see. I would hate to live in one of these houses with that bright blue light shining right into my window, keeping me up all night, increasing my risk of cancer and diabetes, et cetera. Right here in downtown, the city ignores its own policies. The lighting ordinance in Northampton applies only to private property, which is to say residential and commercial property. It does not apply to the city's own street lights or parking lot lights. This is common in Massachusetts. There's this division between city policies and policies applied to everybody else. And different cities and towns in Massachusetts can decide which they want to do first or prioritize, or whether they want some blanket policy. Northampton chose only the private property regulation. They have no official policy regarding their own lighting. And so lights like this go up in this parking lot in downtown. It's higher than the policy applied to private property. It should be only 16 feet high. It's easily 25 feet high. It's got terrible glare. It's super bright, way brighter than it needs to be. It's too blue. It's much bluer than 3000K. And it's on all night long, even when nobody's here. And you might think that nobody is here now because you don't see anybody, but actually there is a guy peeing in the bushes right then while I took this picture. So as I was setting up my tripod, he ran out from a neighboring bar and, looked both ways, ducked into the bushes. And I say this just because I think it's emblematic of the futility of lighting a parking lot like this, in the belief that it leads to good behavior. I mean, not that I have any problem really with peeing in the bushes, but most people would say, oh, well, that's a little bit sketchy, and who's there, and I feel unsafe if it's dark. And we all know that light doesn't actually make you any safer, and it certainly doesn't have any significant effect in reducing crime. Above a certain threshold that is a minimum threshold well exceeded by these lights and most lights in Northampton, it just makes no difference. So how did Northampton get to the situation it's in? Of course, the same way most of your places did. This is my street. I was so happy for this brief period of time when the street light outside my house was broken. And you can see the light just barely on in the middle of the picture, silhouetted against the tree there. But how glorious to be able to see stars directly from my house. Now, the light was broken in a funny way. And this is, by the way, the old street light, the old high pressure sodium. This is in 2015 or so, 2016. I knew they were about to replace these streetlights with LED streetlights. And I wanted to capture what life was like before that. So here is my capture. And lo and behold, my high pressure sodium streetlight broke, the bulb went out, and it was off for 15 seconds. And then it would be on for 15 seconds. And then it would be off for 15 seconds. And then it would be on for 15 seconds. So I got these 15-second exposures and recorded it for posterity. Now, what happened next, of course, well, we know what happened. They replaced it with an LED. Same camera, same location, same settings, same lens, same everything. This is before, here's after. Here's the new LED streetlight that the city put in. Now, I'm happy to tell you more details about the technical side of this light fixture. Like all LEDs, the light is going down. There's no uplighting directly, but there's a lot of glare. There's a lot of blue light, and it's super bright. And this was a terrible, terrible blow to me and my family, and I would say to the health and welfare of all residents of Northampton and all the wildlife surrounding our house and our neighborhood and our city. I'm sure many of you have similar stories to tell. And so my heart really sank, and this was a tough blow. I was really depressed when this happened. We were fighting tooth and nail with the city over every lighting decision that got made. They made that decision about the streetlights. We had pitched battle with the city over months and months, and we essentially lost. We didn't want them to put that model of light. We wanted a better model, and it didn't happen. Here is the equivalent of Central Park in our little town of Northampton, Pulaski Park. Recently remodeled, redesigned at city expense, with a huge amount of public input, a terrific process, lots of meetings, charrettes, workshops, discussions back and forth, selection of designers and selection of construction contractors. And it finally all happened. And they put in this beautiful pollinator garden to attract pollinating insects by day. What they did not do was ask anybody, including us experts, about the lighting. They just made their decision based on their lighting contractor. And what we got was this: unbelievably bright lights, super blue, super bright, 4,000 K, bluer than any recommendation from DarkSky at the time. These lights are actually DarkSky approved, the fixture themselves, because again, there's no uplighting. It's what you're seeing there, that glare is coming out sideways. At least it's not going up in the sky. But the city said, look, they're IDA approved. And we fought them about that, but it was too late. You know, they'd already spent the money on the lights. They'd already designed it, they'd installed them, and they would not listen. They would not meet with us. They wouldn't answer emails. This is City Hall, and the decision making for the lighting, which all resided in one particular office. Any place we turned to police. They would say, oh, go talk to Central Services, talk to, you know, this guy. We talked to the mayor. They either wouldn't listen, they would say that the decisions are being made by this guy in Central Services. We would talk to Department of Public Works, same thing. We just didn't get anywhere. So again, this was a bitter pill to swallow. We attract pollinating insects by day, and then we kill them with bright blue lights at night. These lights are 15 times brighter than some recently designed parks in New York City. And we pointed that out with a postcard campaign to the city. No response. So what do? We organized. We were so fed up with this brick wall that we decided, all right, we've just got to get our act together. So we founded an organization. Here it is, the simple website, simple name, Northampton City Lights. We got the domain name, northamptoncitylights.org. We built a basic website. You see a sort of early version of it here. And we started meetings. We had regular meetings every month, just in my living room. And now we're meeting at a cafe in downtown. We met over Zoom during the pandemic. And our mission, of course, was to protect human health and wildlife and bring back the stars in the Milky Way. improve safety and quality of life. How do we do it? It's partly education. It's partly political pressure. It's partly demonstration. It's all the things that we advocates do that you're doing already wherever you live and work. We give illustrated presentations like this. Tanglewood is a famous music venue, not in Northampton, but many people in Northampton know it and love it. And we talk about all the problems with light pollution that I don't need to lecture you about. We talk about the impact on migrating birds. These are all birds I photographed within a mile of my house here in Northampton. We talk about the importance for historic cities like Springfield of respecting the built environment as well as the natural environment, and of providing not just safety with light, but also beauty with light and respect with light. And we went to the political system. We have made a point now, every election since we formed, of polling all the candidates for election in city government, the mayor, the city councilors. We asked them all some questions about light pollution. Do you think Northampton should pay more attention? If elected, what will you do to reduce light pollution? Some cities have outdoor lighting committees. Would you support such a lighting committee in Northampton? And we send these out to the candidates, ideally with enough time for them to respond. And here at the bottom, you see some of their responses. I'm enthusiastically in favor of incorporating the signs. All right, this is great. So what have we done here? We've started a relationship. And while before we were getting stonewalled, we could not get a response from City Hall. And if we showed up at a city council meeting, we would have only 3 minutes per person to say our piece. And the councilors would not be required, not even allowed to respond. So it was really like speaking to a brick wall. But here we found a way in. We found a way to have conversations with leaders who are making decisions about the city and to get the conversation in the public sphere. So this, I think, is an easily repeatable process by any of you. I hope that you'll consider doing it in your cities and towns. You got to think ahead, of course. Here it is, May. Think to whenever your elections happen next, assuming you have elections, and try to get organized ahead of time to get your questions ready, and then figure out a way to disseminate the information. We can put these responses on the website, fine, no legal problem. What we're not allowed to do is endorse candidates, at least not as a nonprofit. But we can certainly put the information out there. So we did, and we're going to do the same thing again this year. So I feel as if this is a key moment for us in Northampton, is in really getting the issue of light pollution into the public sphere effectively and going right to the heart, City Hall. I'm happy to say that the seeds that we sowed through this process bore fruit. When it came to September 2020, there was a statewide bill, and this is another story, but I'll just say that we've been trying for over 20 years to get good light pollution regulation passed in the state of Massachusetts. We're the only state in the New England region that has not passed any statewide control of light pollution. And we're still trying. And 2020, we had a bill that's a proposed law before the legislature in the state of Massachusetts. And we got Northampton City to endorse that bill. So here's the city of Northampton saying, we, just one of 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts, we think this is a good bill. And here are some of the reasons, whereas this and whereas that, light pollution is bad, curbing light pollution is good, and we endorse the bills. It costs them nothing, right? They don't have to change any lights of their own. Northampton doesn't have to. It doesn't require any person power. It just required them approving this officially and reading it out loud at a city council meeting. So you can imagine this is a pretty good feeling when they read this resolution aloud and then endorsed it unanimously. And we got to send this resolution of endorsement to the state of Massachusetts, to the legislators and the governor's office. Again, it's kind of like sleight of hand. It's a little bit of spin control, isn't it? Because we haven't actually passed any legislation here, but we're getting it talked about and we're getting support on board. And it costs nothing. It might cost something when the legislation actually passes. I think it's going to be a net gain, but There may be some cost involved, but not in this part of it. So I'm happy to suggest to you that if you've got some issue that you are working on in a big picture, you might get your small local government to endorse it, and by way of getting the conversation going. Okay, well, this leads us to the 5 principles now, which emerged from IDA and the Illuminating Engineering Society at around this time. And I think this is a fantastic vehicle for bringing the conversation around light pollution into the public realm and into the decision-making realm, if it's not already happening. It's, again, in the same vein as I was just saying, it costs nothing to have a conversation and to consider these values, and especially to adopt them. It's an easy ask. It's a very difficult ask. If we're approaching City Hall and saying, would you form a committee, and would you staff that committee? Would you commit city resources to meeting with us and making decisions for the future? It's going to be a lot of staff time. They're afraid it's going to require throwing some good money after bad to rip out the bad lights they put in. They're afraid of that. They are afraid that it's going to open up some of their control, but they're much less afraid of these 5 principles. It's a low bar, but I think it has a lot of benefits. So we decided we're going to ask the city of Northampton to endorse these 5 principles officially. They're just values. It's like motherhood and apple pie. Nobody could disagree that all light should have a clear purpose, right? Who would disagree with that? Who would disagree that light should be directed only to where needed? No numbers in here, no dollar signs, no lumens, no bug rating, just the values. And if you can get your decision makers to agree to the values, then other things will flow from that. So we did that. We proposed to Northampton's Energy and Sustainability Commission, which had been given by the mayor the control over all the city lighting projects. We proposed to them that they endorse the 5 principles. We talked, again, we tried the relationship building as best we could ahead of time. We talked to individual members ahead of time. We felt that we had a pretty good chance of it passing, and it came up for discussion. We had just a few minutes of discussion about it. We just described the background, where it came from, pointed out how it was not just from the DarkSky advocates, but that it was also from the Illuminating Engineering Society, which Northampton already turned to for advice on the lighting levels that were appropriate for this roadway or that parking lot. And lo and behold, they approved it unanimously. So we were thrilled by this. It really felt finally as if we were building some trust in the communication, in the relationship between us and City Hall that had been broken during our fighting over the bad decisions that the city made and their refusal to listen to what we thought was the voice of informed reason. So here we were rebuilding the trust again, and this we felt was a great moment. And the 5 principles have now been included officially into Northampton's master plan. Most cities and towns in the United States have a master plan. Many of them include a sustainability, now a climate component, and the 5 principles are included in Northampton's. All right, you might be wondering, what's going to happen on the road? What's going to happen in the parking lots? What's going to happen with the actual lights that the city decides to put in? Will the city actually adhere to the 5 principles when it rebuilds, for example, this parking lot, which is right next to the historic center of town? Our city, by the way, is over 350 years old. People care about the history a lot. The brick building on the right is a historic building. The lights you see in the middle, in the back, are Pulaski Park, that same park that I showed you before. It's supposed to be a beautiful pollinator garden and a respite for the tired citizens of Northampton. Instead, it's blasted by that light all night long. And you can see the parking lot right next to it is blasted by light all night long. This was a year ago. But notice on the left, that's a low-income housing development. And so we're conscious of the need to protect the health of vulnerable populations, people who maybe have no choice but to live there? Is it fair for us to illuminate their bedroom all night long with artificial light at night? So here is the view from a year ago. Here's the view today. The lights got replaced, and we spent a lot of time and effort trying to get the city to do the right thing with these lights. We wrote a 10-page report, illustrated, fully documented, lots of references, all the latest science arguing for why the city should do a different and better job than what you see here. I'm happy to say that it's not quite as bad as the lights that went into Pulaski Park. These ones are 3000 K, not 4000. There's no direct uplight. Okay, that's already the case for most LEDs these days. They do include controllers, and this was a real success. In fact, they are said to be being dimmed late at night to less than 50% of their brightness. I haven't gone out and measured it myself, but that's what we're told. And the city has even said, once we figure out the controllers, we should be able to implement them as well in Pulaski Park, and maybe even the lights on Main Street. Currently, no other lights besides possibly these are dimmed late at night in Northampton, which is a huge wasted opportunity, as we all know. On the downside, these are the same bad model of lights as in Pulaski Park. They're just high glare, and they're too bright, and there are too many of them, and it's just unnecessary. Does it have to look like this all night long? When we complain to the city, they claim we are listening to the 5 principles. We are compliant with the 5 principles. This, I think, is the main challenge that we all face with relying on the 5 principles. It's not enough. It's a great beginning. It's an entree. I think it's an essential part of our job as advocates, is focusing on the values that we can all share as citizens of the city, for example. The details matter a lot, however. The details are not in the 5 principles. What comes after the 5 principles really matters a lot. Here's another good note that I'm happy to be able to come to and share with you. This is International DarkSky Week, just 2 weeks ago now in Northampton. We had our first ever Northampton Night Fest. And how it happened was we asked the city of Northampton to issue a proclamation recognizing International DarkSky Week. And they did. It wasn't easy. They didn't respond at first. They didn't respond at second. But finally, when I wrote again an email to the mayor and said, Mayor Chiara, I haven't heard back from you. I'm going to be on television this week, and I would love to be able to say, as I talk about International DarkSky Week, that Northampton has issued a proclamation. And I immediately got an email back saying, yes, 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 happy to do it. So we got the proclamation. It got read at City Council. I had it behind me in my TV interview. And once we had a proclamation from the city, we realized, oh, well, now we have to do something. We have to organize an event. So we organized an event. We partnered with a local history museum called Historic Northampton, which has this beautiful campus. And they gave us permission to use their campus for an event. We really didn't know what we were doing. We pulled it together in about 2 days. We sent it out to radio and TV and newspaper. And about 30 or 40 people came to our stargazing event. We started with a moment of silence, just listening to the night sounds, which this is right next to downtown, so it's mostly traffic. But we saw the stars come out, beautiful views of the moon and Venus and the spring stars. And we talked a little bit about light pollution. Mostly we talked about the magic of the night and the importance of protecting it. And we did some stargazing through my telescope here. The point is, this is, I think, a culmination of years of effort. And the 5 principles were a key piece in those years of effort at bringing light pollution to the fore in the public discussion in Northampton. I'm also happy to say that Smith College has just endorsed the 5 principles. This is where I work. This is the small private university for women, historically for women, where I teach and do research. Smith already had a pretty good policy. In fact, I would say the best lights in Northampton, if you have to have city lights, come to Smith College to see how lighting can be done very well. Not perfectly, but very well. The lower right picture you see is the standard walkway light that Smith uses, mostly hidden in this inverted gooseneck can. The view on the upper right is of Paradise Pond in the middle of campus. And you can see the stars pretty well, and students frequently do that, and they walk around the pond to get a look at the sky. Smith recently rebuilt their central library, Nielsen Library, and part of the design included an amphitheater, a new amphitheater, where the lighting for the whole project was done by a New York City-based award-winning lighting designer, Suzanne Tillotson. And she did a beautiful job, she and her firm, at sensitive, effective, very, very low glare, zero glare, warm color, well-controlled lighting. And you see the steps of the amphitheater here. There are students out there. Okay, I can look out my window and I see there are students there right now and enjoying their lunch. At nighttime, it feels perfectly safe. And yet the light trespass and the glare is minimized, is practically zero. And it's done so beautifully that I regularly invite people from other cities and towns to come to Northampton. I've got another visitor lined up in the next week or so to come and see how it's done. Again, this didn't just happen out of the blue. It happened following many years of building relationships on campus. We astronomers, we partnered with biology, environmental science and policy, engineering, neuroscience, landscape studies, other departments. We have been involved in the so-called night walks that happen on campus every semester. They used to be just students saying, oh, it's dark over there, it's dark over there, I don't feel safe, we need more light. And the college would try to resist that pressure. But now we've really changed the conversation. And now, instead of just saying it's too dark, sometimes we say it's too light over there, that light has too much glare, we should fix that. So it's been, again, many years. Just this year, we submitted a petition, a letter to the president asking the college to adopt the 5 principles officially. And I'm happy to say the president referred it to a campus planning committee. I'm happy to say the campus planning committee invited us faculty representatives and student activists to come and address them. We did. We argued the case for good control of light pollution. And they unanimously endorsed the 5 principles. It's just a month or so ago. The really good news is that they immediately followed up with an email from facilities requesting us to provide recommendations for the lighting design standards. Whenever any company is hired to do a project at Smith College, they get a packet from the college of their design standards. The steps have to look like this, the bricks have to look like that, and now it's going to include lighting. So we're in the process of writing those lighting design standards. This is, of course, not isolated. It's part of a big project. A national project in this case of the American Astronomical Society. The movie I'm showing here is a student project at Smith, where they convinced the college to turn the lights off in their dormitory quad for 2 hours on Earth Day last year, and they threw a party. They had a pizza party. Now the lights come on again at the end. Now it cycles back to the beginning. You can see the stars. It was a huge success. Students came, they lay out on blankets under the stars and enjoyed the view that they had never had when the lights were on. I'm working with my wonderful colleagues in the American Astronomical Society Light Pollution Subcommittee. How's that there? I'm working with my colleagues across the country, at least Dan Caton is on the call today, maybe others as well, to expand this to a nationwide program. We're calling it Campus Shine, Safe, Healthy Illumination for the Nighttime Environment. We didn't use the word dark because we know that it's a sort of hot button word and issue for some students, including students here at Smith. We just didn't want to deal with having to defend darkness. Instead, we're focusing on the good things that come from the darkness, the safety, the healthiness, the importance of protecting the nighttime. Our larger program is geared towards helping campuses grapple with light pollution in a way that is effective and and reasonable on short timescales, and is not just focused on astronomy, but on all the different aspects that light pollution touches, which most people on this call know very well. We're writing a how-to manual that any faculty member or even any student could pick up in any field and use as a guide for how to implement good lighting on their own campus. And early on in that process has to be get the campus to adopt the 5 principles. Of course, those 5 principles are relatively new. They're only a couple of years old. We started our process here at Smith College long before that, so we've done it backwards. But if you're at a place where this hasn't happened yet and you haven't had that conversation, or you're coming new to a campus or an institution, this is my advice. Start with the 5 principles. Get people to talk about the values inherent to them before you go on to the other details. But also, it's important, engage with the students. Having the students do their own projects here and bring it to the administration was key in our success, I think. It's crucial that it not just be about astronomy. I say this as an astronomer. It's critical that we talk about the animals that are affected, about the human health that's affected. This is what most people care about. And eventually, our process here at Smith is going to lead to adopting campus lighting standards, and I hope that that will happen elsewhere as well. I'll just add that we're coordinating with the new program that, sorry, this is not IDA, it should be DarkSky, the Roland program, the Responsible Outdoor Light at Night program that is currently under development. It's an education program to teach people how to do it right, to teach planners and lighting designers and decision makers on how to do outdoor lighting right, and maybe to get some sort of credit for learning that. So with that, I'm going to close and say thank you so much for your attention. I wish you all the best of luck in your own communities. And I'm going to guess that many of you have more experience and more success than I do. You've heard a little bit about the challenges that I faced here in Northampton, but also how we've made good progress. And I'm happy to be able to end on the good note of our proclamation and our 5 principles here at Smith, as well as in the city. And now I am delighted to open it up to questions and comments and maybe suggestions for improving the advice that I've given you here. What's your experience been in this struggle that we share?
Awesome, James. Thank you very, very much. That was very insightful. And I know everybody here is just, I mean, the chat has been blowing up about everything that you've been telling us. So I'm going to remove your spotlight real fast here. And so I want to read off some questions. If everybody in the chat, both here in Zoom and on Facebook, please type your questions into the chat and we will go through them. First off, James, from Mariana, do you have any tips for how to present these ideas to your town's politicians? You know, how do you approach it? What are the talking points? You know, like what's your elevator pitch for the leaders?
Sure. My suggestion, you know, we did not have great success going to city council meeting in council chambers where you approach the microphone and you've got the city councilors arrayed around you and you give your 3-minute speech. It just kind of goes into a black hole. Where we had more success, I would say, was one-on-one meetings. And I think this is an essential part of local politics. You have to meet with your local politicians one-on-one over tea or coffee or lunch and talk through the issues. The issues, we all know what they are. For us, there might even be the same variety that is out there in the non-advocacy world. For me as an astronomer, of course, I care about the ability to share the sky with my students and the public and to be able to do my research. But I also care about the animals that are impacted. I also care about the breast cancer that my relatives are going to suffer at higher rates because of light pollution. And you never know what an individual is going to resonate with, which part of the message. It might be about the fiscal irresponsibility of burning electricity to light up the sky at the rate of billions of dollars a year in the United States alone. It might be about the aesthetic and historic nature of your city or town. You just don't know really what's going to resonate. My suggestion is try to figure it out. Do your homework ahead of time to figure, for the particular politicians you're speaking with, what are the issues, the values they already care about, they already have, and try to find the overlap with that. But honestly, I've been surprised many of times. So I would say, all 5 of the main reasons to care about light pollution, put them all out there. Make them short and sweet, but put them all out there and see what interest there is, and take it from there.
Awesome. Trung asks, how influential can a college's policies be to the policies of the town in which that university or college resides in?
Thanks. I do think about that a fair amount. I think there are 2 main ways that the college policies can be helpful. One of them is by setting an example for the town, so that when we go to the town, we can say, oh, look, Smith College is doing it. They're in the town and they're doing a better job than you are. So why don't you copy them? The other way is that, of course, we're setting a foundation for students who are going to go on to other places and take the knowledge and experience with them. If we can get them to develop good habits, good understanding about the issues here in my classes, in advocacy, in being at a campus that is relatively dark, but well lit in the sense that it's responsibly lit, that it's lit with an eye towards actual safety, so that people are not tripping or slipping on the ice, and they feel safe. They can see their destination, they can see the walkway, but they're not being poked in the eye or inundated, flooded with horrible bright blue light. If we can set that as the norm to the students who are here now, and then they go off to wherever they're going, to their next stage of life, then that's a huge win as well. And I think that's maybe where our biggest influence is as an educational institution.
Absolutely. Georgia from Ireland. Hi, Georgia. She asks, the training you mentioned for planners, engineers, etc., are those transferable outside of the US? They want to see about implementing some of those things for DarkSky Ireland.
Yes, thank you, Georgia. And I'm a fan of yours as well. Great work that you're doing in Ireland. The idea of the Roland program is definitely for it to be international. We are always sort of rubbing up against that issue and problem. I think we're a little bit United States heavy for various historical reasons. And we're trying to keep aware of that and make it as generally adaptable internationally as possible. And so I see no reason that there shouldn't be good use there in Ireland.
Awesome. Mr. Robert Parrish asks, how does the city enforce the lighting regulations that are in place now?
Officially, there is one person, the building inspector, whose job it is to enforce essentially all of the planning, all the zoning related private property, that's commercial and residential development. And it's not just lighting, of course, it's rebar, construction, brick, concrete, electricity, plumbing. That inspector is supposed to go around to every project when it's done and sign off, okay, this is up to code, this is up to code, this is up to code. In practice, as we all know, lighting is relatively poorly understood. And that inspector is not a lighting expert, that building inspector. And we have tried to build a relationship with that building inspector, but it has been very slow going in Northampton. That's again one of the reasons for this DarkSky Roland education program, to make it just more easily available information that a city or town could proactively seek out the information. Okay, how could I enforce this? What does illuminance mean? What's the difference between illuminance and luminance? And what's a watt have to do with a lumen, and et cetera, et cetera. So the unfortunate truth is it's really poorly enforced in Northampton. It's enforced mostly on a complaint basis. It does happen that the planning board, when they receive a proposal for a project, a proposed development, for example, they have, I think, good values. I think they understand the need to protect against light pollution. What they don't have is the deep technical expertise. So they try to stop things at that point in the stream before something gets built. After it gets built, they send the inspector in, but there are numerous sort of holes in the pipeline along the whole way. And that's a problem without a really easy direct fix. I'd be happy to know what your suggestions and experience are.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas Berta asks, is there a plan to keep new homeowner from changing their lights after moving to Northampton?
Sorry, let me make sure I understand. People move to Northampton, and then you're asking if we want them to, they buy a house, say, we want them to change the lights right then? Is that what you're suggesting?
Tom, is that what you're asking there?
No, the main one was asking to see if the builders put in the proper lighting, IDA lighting, the way we want it, which we've had some do it here in Charleston, South Carolina. Then a new homeowner comes in and changes the light to when it puts glare out.
I see. Right. So in other words, you start with a good light and then an owner puts in a bad light. That is currently not well regulated in Northampton, just because, as I mentioned at the beginning, our existing bylaw is too weak, and it allows exceptions for anything less than, I think it's 8,000 lumens, which means that essentially anybody's private house lights are already perfectly allowed. There's no illegality to, the worst glare bomb that you can go buy at Home Depot and stick on your house is allowed in Northampton. We're hoping to fix that. We're working on a revision of the bylaw. In fact, it's an advanced stage right now. And at that point, there, I think, would be reasonable limits that would prevent what you're saying from happening.
Debbie Castro in Lost Creek. She asked, is it more expensive to enforce dark sky lighting in Northampton? Is there a cost associated with that enforcement?
Sure, there's always a cost with associated with enforcement. You have to pay somebody's time and effort to do it. You might have to buy some equipment to measure the light properly. But there's certainly a cost associated with not doing it. And that cost is worse quality of life. And that cost is worse public health. And the cost is loss of habitat for wildlife, including pollinators that our food supply depends on. So it's just like clean air and clean water. There certainly is a cost to protecting those things, but there's a much greater cost to not protecting them.
Debbie Moran in Houston asks, do we have a product problem? She says there are very few lights designed to look like the PAR shield, which uses a strongly angled shield and allows covering a larger area while remaining shielded. That is often the cause of bad lighting. So to reiterate, do we have an availability of truly dark sky friendly lighting out in the market?
Absolutely, of course, we definitely have a product problem, and I'm happy that DarkSky is aware of this and working on it. It's a really thorny problem. We would love to regulate it at the national level. This is what we're grappling with. Even if Northampton passes a better bylaw, which I think is going to happen, it's only 1 out of 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. We're working at the Massachusetts level. What we don't have yet is a serious national policy to protect dark skies in the United States. But I know some of you are calling in from countries where there are better national efforts to protect that, to control that. Until that happens, I don't see any way to stop the product problem. As long as there are bad products out there and people are allowed to buy them and install them and use them, then the producers keep producing them. And 90% of the lights out there or more are crap, as we all know. But if they sell, then and they're allowed, then what are we going to do?
Yeah, it takes a lot of diligence on the consumer end to really go out and find what truly is appropriate outdoor lighting. And that's what we're all here for, is to learn what those are and try to elevate those products to folks and be the boots on the ground, be the spokespeople for the better products out there, because that's the only way it's going to change. Money talks, as they say. So Izzy Donaldson from Scotland, she says she's currently in a town and the local area is going through a lot of expansion, new housing and lights, already been a lot of increased light pollution. in the past 5 years. She says she won't be in that area for much longer, but what do you recommend that she focuses on? What's something to focus on in a very short amount of time?
Wow. I would say pick a project that seems achievable and that you're excited about. It's got to be one that keeps your attention enough that you'll spend the time to focus on it. It might just be having a conversation with the right decision maker. Spend the time to find the decision maker who seems to be at the crux of those decisions. I don't know enough about Scottish planning and development to know where in the government structure that would be, but maybe there's a planner who actually is in control of deciding the look and feel of development. Maybe there is a regional body that already has a light pollution discussion or regulation or some kind of bylaw in it that needs to be enforced or that needs to be improved. So I don't know offhand, but I would say, keep it small enough that it's likely to get done. Don't try and fix it all at once, unless you've got a bigger group. Another option would be start a group and then leave, but hope that the group stays without your leadership.
James, do you have any closing words for us? Any encouraging thoughts to leave us with this afternoon, morning?
Yeah,
evening?
this is just the best, most important issue that I'm involved with, and I know that you all share this feeling, and it's so great to be able to do it together. I mean, I really get a lot of energy from being in the room with you all. So congrats to you. Looking forward to hearing about your successes and experiences. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yep, 100%. Thank you all for joining. Congratulations, James, on everything for International Dark Sky Week. Congratulations again to everybody for what you've done during the week a couple of weeks ago. Again, we keep this ball rolling, we keep moving forward, and we want to get those lights pointed where they need to be, color temperature the right way, dimmed, it turned off when they can be. So James, thank you again for everything that you've shared with us.